What really matters in F1 testing? With Formula 1 testing just around the corner, what are the things we should be keeping an eye out for this year? What things should we be focusing on, and what should we be ignoring? Let's take a look. Lap times. Helpful or not? Lap times are often what people keep an eye out for in F1 testing, and sure, sometimes these lap times can help us get an idea of what to expect from the cars and drivers in the following races. For example, last year Red Bull were placing at the top, if not very near the top, of the timing sheets, and as we all know, Red Bull continued to absolutely dominate the entire season. However, last year also saw Alfa Romeo placing high up on the timing sheets, which made people very excited for their future performances. Jolyon Palmer even referred to them as the dark horses of the season. Yeah, they ended up P9 in the Constructors' Championship last year. Therefore, lap times often don't reflect genuine performance in F1, and just because one team may be a bit slow in testing doesn't necessarily mean that they will do badly in the actual races. They could be doing just what the name suggests. Testing. Testing allows drivers to become further acquainted with their new cars in preparation for the long season ahead of them. Some may be getting back into the swing of things and so might be taking a little bit easier in order to gather as much data as possible to afford themselves the best chances come the first race. As fun and impressive as it might be to set the fastest lap time, sometimes that's not the best way to see if they have accurate data gathered from the simulators and wind tunnel. Unless it's Ferrari, in which case, if Charles Leclerc sets the fastest lap time, it's a guaranteed Drivers' Championship. Delusion is well and truly setting in. In the past, teams used to run on very low amounts of fuel in order to set speedy lap times and attract attention and potential sponsors. This doesn't really seem to happen as much now, probably because testing is so much shorter, so teams have to make sure they don't waste any time not gathering reflective data. However, teams do still run different fuel loads throughout testing, so don't be too shocked if Haas randomly places at the top of the timesheets, especially because they were quite good at qualifying last year, just terrible in the race. Upgrades. Another thing to keep in mind is that teams can often bring pretty big upgrades to their cars between testing and the first race of the season. Red Bull has been bold, bringing a car that looks a bit like the Mercedes from last year. Sergio Perez said himself that, "I think it's really brave from Red Bull to do that." And because it's Red Bull, they've probably knocked the ball out of the park and have given Max Verstappen another rocket ship. 24 wins incoming? But you never know, maybe it will be a huge flop and they'll revert to something else, just like Mercedes did. Although this is Adrian Newey, so I'm sure he has been cooking up a storm. It'll also be interesting to see if the teams that have used a lot of paint on their cars, such as VCarb or Ferrari, decide to shed some of that paint before the start of the season. Please no. As we learned from the car launches this year, a lot of the teams haven't used much paint on their cars, instead favouring the bare carbon, which, even though it makes their cars look a little bit boring, does make them a tiny weeny bit lighter. As much as we hope they don't, we could see some teams making Crofty's job infinitely harder and getting rid of paint where they can. Reliability. One of the most important things teams have to test for is the reliability of their cars. If your car can hardly run a full race distance, that's probably not a great sign for the season ahead, as McLaren Honda found out the hard way in 2015. At testing, Jenson Button and Fernando Alonso, the two drivers for the team, were never able to run more than 40 laps in one day, with the car suffering from many different reliability issues. These issues were a sign of worse things to come, because the car did not perform well in the 2015 season, even at the hands of two former world champions, and they ended up placing in P9 in the constructors' standings that year, with a grand total of 27 points. Therefore, making sure that your car doesn't break all the time when you're trying to complete a race is really important. Arguably much more important than whatever it says on a timesheet. If cars are able to stay out on track for a long time, putting in a lot of laps with a full fuel tank, along with suffering from very few issues, it probably means you've got a pretty reliable car. So let's hope that Ferrari don't randomly forget to, stick a fuel tank in or pop some tyres on the car. Speaking of tyres, testing may not be about times as such, but it's definitely learning about the tyres and how they interact with the new car that each team has come up with this season. This data is crucial for the upcoming races, and even more so for round one, as it's set at the same venue in Bahrain. So what do you think? What are you looking forward to seeing the most in F1 testing? Let us know in the comments.